Hello there. Tonight we are going to slip into the strange, sweaty and surprisingly sweet world of medieval European wedding customs, where love was less about roses and more about surviving the smell of your neighbor's unwashed tunic. Picture this. You're in a creaky cottage in medieval France, waking up on your wedding day to the scent of damp straw and a pig snuffling outside your window. The air is thick with the tang of wood smoke and something that might be last week's soup. Your bed is a lumpy mattress stuffed with hay, and the dawn light sneaks through a wall patched with pig intestines. It's not glamorous, and honestly, you probably won't survive the day without at least one villager stepping on your foot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love knowing who's out there in the dark, cozying up to history. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You roll out of bed, your bare feet hitting the cold dirt floor, and immediately regret every life choice that led to this moment. It's your wedding day, but there's no champagne brunch or spa appointment here. You're in a 14th century village, and the closest thing to a morning routine is splashing your face with stream water if you're lucky. Bathing isn't a thing. Not really. The village shares a single wooden barrel for washing, and it's 2 miles away, filled with water that's more mud than liquid. Soap. That's a luxury made from ash and animal fat, smelling like a mix of fireplace and regret. You're not clean, and neither is anyone else. Everyone's just used to it. Your hair is a tangle, but you braid it tightly, weaving in wildflowers that still have a few ants crawling on them. The scent of lavender fights a losing battle against the whiff of turnips and sheep dung clinging to your clothes. Your dress is waiting, draped over a stool. It's not white's impractical, and bleach hasn't been invented yet. It's a heavy wool tunic dyed a deep green from crushed plants with a patch from last season's tear. This is your best outfit, probably borrowed from your sister or cousin, and it smells faintly of smoke and the last person who wore it. You slip it on the fabric, scratching your skin, and your mother ties a sprig of rosemary to your belt for remembrance. She mutters something about keeping your womb warm, and you nod, pretending you understand. Behind your ears, the local healer has smeared a paste of crushed garlic to ward off bad suitors and apparently plague. You're not sure it's working, but last week she cured a sore throat with boiled moss and shouting, so you don't argue. The village is already stirring outside. You hear the clatter of wooden buckets, the bleat of a goat, and someone yelling about a lost shoe. Your stomach churns, not just from nerves, but because breakfast is a hunk of stale bread and a swig of watery ale. Weddings here aren't private affairs. They're a village spectacle, a mix of celebration and nosy supervision. Your neighbors, most of whom are related to you in ways no one's bothered to clarify, are gathering to watch. Marriage in medieval Europe was a public contract, not a romantic whim. Your parents have been negotiating this for months, maybe years, haggling over dowry's land and who gets the good cow. An authoritative historical fact in medieval Scandinavia, families often checked the groom's teeth before approving a marriage, as bad teeth signaled weak health and potentially frail children. Love was nice, but molars were non-negotiable. You step outside and the air feels heavier, like the whole village is holding its breath. Your shoes, soft leather cracked at the sides, slap against the dirt like tired fish. You're sweating already, partly from the wool dress, partly from the weight of everyone's eyes. A kid runs by chasing a chicken, and you nearly trip. The priest is there, wobbling, slightly smelling of last night's ale. He's clutching a leather-bound book that's more family ledger than Bible. His lazy eye makes you wonder if he's blessing you or the goat behind you. The ceremony hasn't even started, and already it's chaos charming messy medieval chaos. Now here's an odd fact to chew on. Some brides carried bouquets, not for romance, but to mask the smell of unwashed bodies and livestock. Your bouquet clutched in sweaty hands is a mix of lavender and herbs with a faint whiff of garlic, because, well, the healer insisted. Historians still debate whether medieval bathing habits were truly as bad as we think. Some say public bathhouses were common in cities like Paris until disease fears shut them down. Others argue rural folk saw washing as a spiritual act, not a daily chore. Either way, you're not fresh, and neither is anyone else. The village doesn't care. They're here for the vows, the food, and the gossip. Your fiancé is across the yard looking as nervous as you feel. His beard is braided with what might be a fishbone, and his tunic is a loud mix of yellow and red like he's trying to blind the sun. You catch his eye and he grins a lopsided, hopeful grin. You nod back, heart thumping. It's not Hollywood love, but it's something. The geese stop honking. The blacksmith pauses his hammer. Even the baby in the crowd is quiet, as if the whole village knows this moment matters. You're not just marrying a man. You're tying yourself to his family, his debts, his barley fields, and maybe even his cranky baron. It's a lot, and you're not even at the vows yet. The day stretches ahead, full of strange rituals and stranger expectations. You're about to step into a world where marriage is less about love and more about survival, social economic, and sometimes just avoiding the priest's bad breath. The flowers in your hair itch, the garlic paste stings, and you're pretty sure someone's cow just wandered into the ceremony space. Welcome to your wedding day medieval style. It's going to be a long, weird, wonderful ride. The village square is buzzing now, a chaotic swirl of neighbors, cousins, and that one guy who always brings his goose everywhere. You're standing in the middle of it all, your wool dress sticking to your skin like a clingy barnacle, the scent of garlic and lavender warring behind your ears. The crowd's not here just to cheer. They're witnesses, nosy and official, ready to make sure this marriage sticks in the village's collective memory. The air smells of mud ale and anticipation, with a faint whiff of someone's unwashed tunic, probably your uncle's, who's already arguing about a pigsty boundary. This isn't a private moment. It's a public event, like a market day with better snacks. Marriage in medieval Europe was a social contract, a glue that held families, land, and feuds together. You're not just tying the knot, you're signing up for a lifetime of shared goats and gossip. The crowd presses closer, a mix of familiar faces and vague cousins whose relation to you is a mystery wrapped in a family tree nobody's bothered to untangle. Kids dart underfoot, one of them waving a stick like it's a sword, nearly tripping the baker's wife. She's carrying a basket of warm bread, her contribution to the feast, and gives you a knowing nod, like you're both in on some secret about surviving this day. The blacksmith, still leaning on his hammer, his apron smeared with soot, watching like he's judging your ability to handle a plow. Your parents are off to the side, whispering with your fiancé's family, probably finalizing the dowry or debating who gets the extra barley. It's not love they're negotiating, it's survival alliances and maybe a spare cow. An authoritative historical fact marriage in medieval Europe often required public witnesses to be legally binding, especially in rural areas where written contracts were rare. The crowd isn't just here for the free ale, they're the paperwork, their presence ensuring no one can claim this union didn't happen. Your fiancé stands a few feet away, his fishbone braided beard catching the sunlight, his tunic a loud clash of colors that screams "I tried." He's flanked by his brothers, all inexplicably armed with knives like they're expecting a dragon to crash the party. You catch his eye again, and he shifts nervously, kicking a pebble. It's sweet in a sweaty medieval way. The priest, still reeking of ale, shuffles forward, his lazy eye making it hard to tell if he's addressing you or the goose. He's holding that leather-bound ledger, its pages crinkled from years of recording births, deaths, and questionable debts. His role today is less about spirituality and more about making this official in front of enough people to squash any future disputes. The crowd hushes, though someone's cow moves in the distance, and a kid giggles before being shooshed. You feel the weight of every stare, every whispered bet about whether you'll trip over your dress or fumble the vows. It's not just a wedding, it's a performance, and the village is your audience. here's an odd fact to ponder. In some parts of medieval Germany, the bride's family would sprinkle dried herbs into her shoes to ensure fertility, which probably just made her feet itch like crazy. You glance down at your own cracked leather slippers, thankful no one stuffed them with thyme, though you're pretty sure there's a pebble in there somewhere. Historians still debate whether these public gatherings were purely practical or also a way to flex community status. Some villages used weddings to show off their wealth, well, as much wealth as a few extra loaves and a slightly fatter pig could convey. Others just wanted to make sure the couple didn't sneak off without everyone's approval. You'd take a step forward, and the dirt crunches underfoot, mixing with the faint jingle of a coin pouch tied to your belt. Your mother fusses with your braid, pulling it tighter, muttering about how you need to look proper. Proper for what? For the priest, who's now hiccuping through a Latin phrase. Nobody understands. For the neighbors who are already placing bets on how many kids you'll have. Or maybe for yourself, because despite the chaos, there's a flicker of pride in standing here in this moment with the whole village watching. Your fiancé steps closer, his brother's nudging him like he's about to face a bear, not a bride. His grin is back a little less confident, but still there, and you can't help but smile back, even if your face feels like it's been smiling too long. The crowd parts slightly to let the elders through, old men and women with faces like weathered oak, carrying the weight of village wisdom and a few too many opinions. One of them, a woman with a scarf tied so tight it looks like it's strangling her, hands you a small clay cup of ale. It's warm, thick, and tastes like it was brewed in a sock, but you sip it anyway because refusing would be rude, and rude gets you gossiped about for a decade. The ale's meant to bless the union, or maybe just loosen everyone up for the vows. Either way, it's strong enough to make you forget the smell of sheep dung for a moment. Your parents and his parents are still huddled, their voices low but intense. You catch snippets, something about a field's boundary, a goat's milk yield, and whether your dowry includes that one lumpy mattress. This isn't romance. It's a business deal, a merger of households, where love is a bonus, not the goal. Your father's face is tight like he's calculating how many chickens he's losing in this deal. Your mother-in-law, to be a woman with the stare of a hawk and the posture of a fence post, gives you a quick once-over, checking your dress's stitching like it's a contract clause. She nods barely, and you feel like you've passed some invisible test. The sun climbs higher, warming the air, and the crowd's getting restless. Someone's dog starts barking, and a kid throws a pebble that narrowly misses the priest. He doesn't notice, too busy flipping through his ledger, muttering about needing more ink. You're starting to wonder if this is less a wedding and more a village-wide endurance test. The goose guy is now feeding his bird bits of bread, and you're pretty sure it's eyeing your bouquet. You shift your weight, the leather shoes slapping softly, and try to ignore the itch of wool against your skin. This is your moment, but it belongs to everyone here. The nosy neighbors, the gossiping aunts, the kid with the stick. They're all part of the deal, the contract, the chaos. You glance at your fiancé again, and he's scratching his neck, looking like he's rethinking the fishbone braid. His brothers are whispering something, probably about how he forgot his lines or lost a bet about showing up on time. There's a strange comfort in seeing him as nervous as you are. This isn't a fairy tale, but it's real, messy, loud, and smelling faintly of livestock. The village is your witness, your judge, and your slightly drunk cheer squad. As the priest clears his throat, ready to start whatever passes for a ceremony, you brace yourself. The day's just beginning, and medieval weddings don't end with a quick I do. They're a marathon, and you're already sweating. The priest's throat clearing cuts through the village square like a rusty knife, and you swear the goose flinches before you do. He's standing there, swaying slightly, his ale-scented breath mingling with the smell of damp earth and nervous sweat. His leather-bound ledger is open, pages yellowed and curling like they've seen too many winters, and his lazy eye, seems to be judging both you and the cow mooing in the distance. The crowd hushes though someone's kid is still giggling and a stray dog sniffs at your cracked leather shoes. This is it. The moment where your wedding becomes official, not with a ring or a kiss, but with a mumbled Latin blessing, and enough witnesses to make sure nobody forgets. The priest's job isn't just to sanctify your union, it's to make it stick, to etch it into the village's memory like a notch on a barn post. You're not just marrying your fishbone bearded fiancé, you're signing a contract with the whole community, and the priest is the ink. He raises one hand, the cleaner one you hope, and starts droning in Latin words that sound like they're tripping over each other. Nobody understands him, not even the village elder who claims he studied with a monk once. The priest's robe is frayed at the hem, stained with what might be ink or last week's stew, and you wonder how many weddings he's botched with that same distracted squint. His ledger isn't even a Bible. It's a family record stuffed with names, debts, and probably a few questionable land deals. In medieval Europe, priests often doubled as notaries, especially in rural areas where literacy was as rare as a clean stream. An authoritative historical fact in the 13th century, the church required verbal consent for marriage to be valid, but the priest's presence was more about public record than divine approval. He's here to make sure your vows are heard, not to check if you're in love. You shift in your wool dress, the fabric itching like 1,000 tiny ants, and try to focus. The crowds watching their faces a mix of boredom, excitement, and mild hunger. Your fiancé stands across from you, his yellow and red tunic looking even louder in the midday sun, the fishbone in his beard glinting like a trophy. He's fidgeting, one hand tugging at his sleeve, and you can tell he's forgotten whatever lines he was supposed to say. You're not much better, your mouth's dry, and the garlic paste behind your ears is starting to burn. The priest pauses, flips a page in his ledger, and mutters something about sacred bonds. You catch your mother's eye. She's nodding like she's proud, but you know she's just relieved you didn't trip on your way to the center of the square. The vows, when they come, are simple, too simple really. Know to have and to hold poetry here. It's more like, do you agree to marry this guy and share his barley? You nod, mumble something that sounds vaguely affirmative, and the crowd chuckles. Your fiancé stammers through his part, his voice cracking like a teenager's, and a kid in the back throws a pebble that lands dangerously close to the priest's foot. He doesn't notice, too busy scribbling in his ledger, probably noting who owes him ale for this. The whole thing feels less like a sacred moment and more like a village meeting where everyone's slightly hungover. You're married now, technically, but there's no ring, no paper, just witnesses, and a priest who might have just blessed the goose by mistake. Here's an odd fact to make you blink. In some parts of medieval England, couples could be considered married just by exchanging vows in front of witnesses no priest required. It was called a clandestine marriage, and it caused endless headaches for the church, who couldn't keep track of who was hitched to whom. You glance at your fiancé now, your husband you suppose, and wonder if you could have just whispered promises by the stream and called it a day. But no. The village needs this spectacle, this public proof that you're bound to him, his family, and their slightly questionable grain yield. Historians still debate whether priests in rural areas were as sloppy as they seemed, or if their casual approach was just practical. With no standardized marriage licenses, their role was more about shouting this happened to the crowd than delivering a perfect sermon. Your priest is living proof of the sloppy side, his robe slipping off one shoulder as he gestures wildly like he's shooing a fly. The crowd's getting restless now, their stomachs rumbling louder than the Latin. Someone's passing around a jug of ale, and you're tempted to grab it, if only to wash away the taste of nerves and stale bread. Your mother-in-law-to-be is still eyeing your dress, probably calculating how many patches it'll need after today. You try to stand taller, but your shoes slap the dirt and the rosemary sprig on your belt is starting to wilt. The ceremony's over in minutes faster than you expected. No music, no rose petals, just a sheep bleating in the background, and the priest's final mumble, which might have been a blessing or a request for more ink. The crowd claps more out of habit than enthusiasm, and a few women toss flower petals that get caught in your braid. You're blushing, or maybe it's just the sun baking your face. Your husband steps closer, his grin back, though it's wobblier now, like he's just realized what he signed up for. You nod at him, and for a moment it's just you two, despite the chaos of cousins' geese, and that one kid who's now chasing the dog with his stick. But the day's not over far from it. The priest tucks his ledger under his arm and shuffles off probably to the nearest ale jug. The crowd starts moving toward the long wooden tables set up for the feast, their chatter rising like a swarm of bees. You're supposed to follow, but your feet feel glued to the dirt, the weight of the moment sinking in. You're married. But it's not about love, not yet, maybe not ever. It's about the village, the land, the dowry, and the fact that everyone here will remember this day whether you want them to or not. Your husband offers you his hand, and you take it, his palm, rough and warm. It's not romantic, but it's real, and in this muddy, noisy square, that's enough. The feast is calling, and you can already smell the bread and hear the clink of mugs. Someone shouting about a pig roast, and the goose guy is trying to convince everyone his bird deserves a seat at the table. You're not sure what's next, more vows, more ale, or just more chaos. But you're in it now. Part of a tradition that's as strange as it is binding. The village is your witness, your judge, and your slightly tipsy cheerleader, and they're not letting you off easy. You take a deep breath, adjust your itchy dress, and step toward the tables ready for whatever medieval madness comes next. You're still catching your breath from the priest's mumbled Latin, and the crowd's half-hearted claps, your hands still warm from your new husband's grip. The village square is shifting now, people drifting toward the feast tables like moths to a flickering candle, their chatter mingling with the clatter of wooden plates and the distant bleat of a sheep who's probably not thrilled about the menu. Your wool dress feels heavier by the minute, sticking to your skin like it's personally offended by the midday heat. You're married now officially, but you can't shake the feeling that the real test is just beginning. Everyone's watching, not just to cheer, but to judge your dress, your posture, the way you didn't trip over that stray pebble during the vows. And speaking of your dress, it's not just a garment. It's a statement, a walking billboard of your family status, your practicality, and maybe even your defiance. In medieval Europe, what you wore to your wedding wasn't about fashion. It was about survival symbolism and showing off just enough to keep the neighbors gossiping for weeks. Your dress is a deep green dyed with crushed nettles, and woe the kind of color that says we're not rich. But we've got a decent garden. It's not white, nobody's got time for that. White gets dirty the second you step outside, and laundry's a nightmare when your only soap smells like a burnt sheep. This dress is your best one, probably handed down from your mother or aunt with patches sewn so carefully you can barely see the stitches. The wool is thick, scratchy, and smells faintly of the last person who wore it, maybe your cousin at her own wedding last spring. It's long dragging, slightly in the dirt, and you've already caught it on a splintered fence post. You're trying not to think about how many hours it'll take to mend it later. Your belt is cinched tight, a woven strip of leather with a sprig of rosemary still dangling from it now, slightly crushed from all the hugging. That rosemary is supposed to mean remembrance, but you're pretty sure it's just there to mask the fact that you haven't bathed since the last full moon. Around your neck hangs a simple cord with a small iron pendant, a gift from your mother this morning. It's not fancy, no jewels here, but it's shaped like a tiny wheel, a nod to St. Catherine, patron of spinsters, which feels like a cheeky jab considering you're literally getting married. Accessories in medieval weddings were less about bling and more about meaning. An authoritative historical fact, brides often wore practical items like belts or pouches as part of their dowry, doubling as both fashion and a literal deposit on the marriage contract. Your pendant clinks softly as you move, a reminder that you're carrying more than just your family's hopes. You're carrying their investment in this union down to the last barley stalk. You glance at the crowd, and there's your mother-in-law, her hawkish eyes scanning your dress like she's checking for flaws in a horse's teeth. She's probably noting the slightly frayed hem, but you don't care. This dress is yours for today, and it's doing its job keeping you covered, signaling your status and surviving the chaos of a village wedding. Some women in the crowd are whispering, pointing at your veil, a thin strip of linen yellowed from age pinned to your braid with a bone clip. Veils weren't universal, but in parts of medieval France they symbolized modesty and protection from, well, whatever spirits might be floating around. Yours is more practical than mystical, keeping the flies off your face and the sun out of your eyes. You adjust it, feeling a bead of sweat roll down your neck, and wonder if anyone notices the garlic paste still burning behind your ears. Probably not. They're all too busy eyeing the bread baskets. Here's an odd fact to make you smirk. In some medieval villages, brides wore their hair loose to signal virginity, but if it was windy, they'd end up with a face full of straw and a very unvirginal temper. Your hair's tightly braided, thank goodness, because the breeze is picking up, carrying the smell of roasting pig and someone's spilled ale. Historians still debate whether the bride's attire was meant to impress the groom or the community. Some say the dress was a flex of family wealth, look at our dye, our stitches, while others argue it was purely functional, chosen to survive the muddy, chaotic reality of village life. Either way, your green dress is holding up, even if you're not sure you are. Your husband's still weird to think that word is standing a few feet away. His tunic, a garish mix of yellow and red that makes him look like a walking harvest festival. He's tugging at his sleeve again, probably regretting the fishbone braid, and you catch him glancing at your dress. Does he like it? Does he even notice? You're not sure it matters. This marriage isn't about romance. It's about alliances land, and maybe that one good cow your father keeps mentioning. Still, you smooth your dress, feeling the rough wool under your fingers, and stand a little taller. The crowd's starting to move toward the feast, and you're expected. Ascendancy, a term from medieval theology, meaning the bride's dominance in the marriage, is a whole other story. But your dress is your armor today, practical and proud. The village elder, the one with the scarf so tight it's practically a noose, shuffles over and hands you another cup of ale. You sip it, wincing at the sock-like aftertaste, and notice the way her eyes linger on your pendant. She nods like she approves, and you wonder if she's thinking about her own wedding day, decades ago, when she wore something similar. The crowd's chatter grows louder, plates clinking as the feast begins. Your dress drags in the dirt as you walk, but you don't care anymore. It's not just fabric, it's your family's name, your future, and a story you'll tell your kids someday, assuming you survive the feast and the inevitable village gossip. You take your husband's arm, his rough hand steadying you, and head toward the tables, ready for the next chapter of this long, strange day. The village square hums with the kind of energy only free food and ale can muster, the air thick with the smell of roasting pig spilled beer and that ever-present whiff of sheep dung. You're still getting used to the weight of your green wool dress, its hem now dusted with dirt like a badge of survival, and your new husband's arm is under yours, steady but a little sweaty. His tunic catches your eye again, a blinding mix of yellow and red that looks like it was dyed by someone who lost a bet with a dyer. It's not just loud, it's a statement, a medieval billboard screaming his family's status, or at least their ability to afford a few pots of pigment. In medieval Europe, the groom's attire was as much a social marker as the bride's shouting wealth, lineage, or just a desperate need to stand out in a sea of brown tunics. You're trying not to stare, but that fishbone braided into his beard is glinting like it's daring you to comment. You don't. Not yet. His tunic is shorter than yours, ending above the knees, showing off legs wrapped in tight woolen hose, that look like they've seen better days, probably because they're borrowed from his brother. The fabric's patched in, places the stitches uneven, but the colors are bold, a mix of madder red and saffron yellow that must have cost his family a month's worth of eggs. He's got a belt, slung low leather, worn soft from years of use, with a small pouch dangling from it. Inside, there's a coin or two, maybe a flint for luck, and definitely some lint from the last time he wore it. His cloak, pinned at the shoulder with a brass brooch shaped like a boar's head, swings as he moves, catching the breeze and the eyes of every gossip in the square. That brooch isn't just decoration. It's a family heirloom passed down from a grandfather, who probably traded a goat for it. An authoritative historical fact: in medieval England, grooms often wore their family's colours or symbols to signal lineage, especially if the marriage sealed an alliance between feuding clans or neighbouring farms. You notice the crowd sizing him up, just like they did with your dress. The baker's wife, still clutching her bread basket, raises an eyebrow at his hose, probably noting a tear near the knee. Your mother-in-law, with her hawkish stare, gives a curt nod, like she's decided his outfit passes muster barely. The village elder scarf, still strangling her neck, mutters something about too much yellow, and you stifle a laugh. Your husband catches it, his lopsided grin flashing, and for a moment you're both in on the joke. His clothes aren't just about looking good, they're a contract, a promise to the village that he's worth your hand, your dowry, and the cow your father's still grumbling about. The fishbone in his beard, though that's just him quirky, and maybe a little proud of it. Here's an odd fact to make you blink. In some parts of medieval Scandinavia, grooms wore belts with tiny bells to ward off evil spirits, which must have made walking to the ceremony sound like a herd of tiny goats. Your husband's belt is mercifully bell-free, but you can't help wondering if he considered it. His boots, scuffed leather, with soles so thin you can see him wince when he steps on a rock-slap the dirt as he shifts his weight. Historians still debate whether grooms dressed to impress their brides or to flex for the community. Some say the bright colors were a way to stand out in a world where most clothes were mud brown. Others argue it was about proving you could afford the dye, even if it meant eating barley gruel for a month. Either way, your husband's tunic is doing its job, turning heads and probably burning a few retinas. He's fidgeting again, tugging at his sleeve like it's personally offended him. You notice a small rip under the armpit hastily stitched, and wonder if he did it himself this morning, cursing under his breath as the needle slipped. His hair's a mess, dark curls sticking out like they're trying to escape, and you resist the urge to smooth them down. Not your job, not yet. His brothers are nearby, still clutching their knives like they're expecting a Viking raid, whispering something that makes him blush. You catch a snippet, something about not tripping during the feast, and you realize they're as nervous for him as your family is for you. This isn't just his day. It's his family's, his farm's, his future's. The crowd's moving faster now, drawn to the long tables where the feast is starting to take shape. You smell bread warm and crusty and hear the sizzle of meat over an open fire. Someone's already spilled ale and a dog's lapping it up, tail wagging like it's been invited. Your husband's cloak catches on a bench as you walk, and he curses softly, then laughs, untangling it with a shrug. You like that laugh. It's honest, a little rough, like the calluses on his hands. His attire might be loud, but it's practical, built for a life of ploughing fields and dodging sheep. The boar brooch glints again, and you wonder if it's a story you'll hear later, maybe over a fire when the village is quiet. The priest now, halfway through a mug of ale, shuffles past his ledger, tucked under his arm like a shield. He gives your husband a squinting glance, probably trying to decide if the yellow tunic is a sin or just an eyesore. The crowd's chatter grows louder, plates clinking, kids running underfoot with bits of bread already smeared on their faces. Your husband's hand brushes yours, not quite holding it, and you feel the weight of his pouch against your hip. It's not just coins in there. It's his stake in this marriage, his promise to the village that he's good for it. You're starting to see him not just as the guy with the fishbone beard, but as someone carrying as much expectation as you are. The feast is calling, and you can hear the village elder shouting about who gets the first slice of pig. Your husband's brothers are already at the table arguing over a jug of ale, and you're pretty sure the goose guy is trying to sneak his bird a sip. Your dress drags in the dirt again, and his cloak nearly trips a kid, but you're both moving forward, part of this loud, messy, medieval machine. His tunic's colors seem to glow in the sunlight, a reminder that he's not just yours, now he's the village's too. You take a deep breath, the rosemary on your belt, mixing with the smell of smoke and meat, and brace yourself for the chaos of the feast. This day's far from over, and your husband's bright patched-up outfit is just the beginning of the stories you'll share. The village square is a riot of noise now, with the feast tables groaning under the weight of bread-roasted pig and jugs of ale that slosh with every careless bump. You're still arm in arm with your new husband, his yellow and red tunic glowing like a warning flag, the fishbone in his beard catching the light as he turns to dodge a kid sprinting by with a stolen loaf. Your green wool dress drags through the dirt, picking up bits of straw and who knows what, and the rosemary sprig on your belt is now more wilted than symbolic. The crowd's buzzing, their faces flushed from sun and ale, and you're trying to keep your veil from slipping as the breeze picks up, carrying the smell of smoked meat and that one guy who still hasn't figured out how to wash his tunic. The priest has wandered off, probably to nap under a tree, his ledger safe from the chaos. But before the feasting can really kick off, there's one more hurdle. The public vows, the moment where you and your husband seal this deal in front of the whole village, their nosy stares, and at least one judgmental goose. You're led to a slightly raised patch of ground. Not quite a platform, but the closest thing to a stage this muddy square has. The crowd circles around their chatter, dropping to a low hum like bees settling for the night. Your husband's hand is sweaty in yours, and you can feel his pulse hammering, probably because he's just realized every eye is on him, including his mother's, who's still glaring like she's tallying the cost of his tunic's dye. The vows aren't like the movies, no flowery promises or teary confessions. In medieval Europe, they were short, practical, and binding a verbal contract shouted loud enough for the back row to hear. An authoritative historical fact, the Church's Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 mandated that marriages required public consent, often declared at the church door or in the village square, to prevent secret unions that could spark disputes over land or heirs. This is your moment to say, "I do," or whatever passes for it in a village where half the words are drowned out by a bleating sheep. The elder with the strangling scarf steps forward, her hands clasped like she's about to lecture you on proper plying techniques. She's not officiating, just making sure everyone knows this is serious business. "Speak clear," she barks, her voice cutting through the crowd's murmurs. You glance at your husband, his curls sticking out like a hedgehog's spines, and he gives you a nervous nod. The vows start with you because apparently the bride goes first to prove she's not being coerced, or so the priest claimed before he wandered off. You take a breath, the air tasting of dust and ale, and say something like, "I take this man, his land and his debts, so help me God." It's not poetic, but it's honest, and the crowd nods satisfied. A few women clap, and one tosses a handful of dried petals that get caught in your veil, making you look like you've been attacked by a flower bush. Your husband's turn is less smooth. He stumbles over his words, something about taking you as wife and sharing the harvest, but he gets stuck on a phrase and ends up muttering, "And the cow, I guess." The crowd roars with laughter, and even you can't help but grin, though your cheeks burn. His brothers are no help, snickering behind him, one of them holding a knife like he's ready to carve the pig or defend his brother's honor, whichever comes first. The elder glares, and he finishes with a rushed amen, which earns a chuckle from the baker's wife. It's done. You're bound not just to each other, but to the village, their expectations, and probably a few of their chickens. Here's an odd fact to make you blink. In some medieval regions, couples sealed their vows by sharing a piece of bread torn from the same loaf, a ritual called breaking the bride's bread, which was supposed to bring luck and a full pantry. Nobody's breaking bread here, mostly because the kids have already raided the baskets, but you're handed a shared cup of ale instead. It's warm, gritty, and tastes like it was brewed in a barn, but you sip it, and so does he, your hands brushing as you pass the cup. Historians still debate whether public vows were more about love or law. Some say they were a way to ensure community accountability, especially for dowries and land. Others argue they gave couples a rare moment to publicly choose each other, even if the choice was half made by their parents. Your vows felt like both a promise and a performance. The crowd's cheering now, though it's less about romance and more about the fact that the feast can finally start. Someone's already slicing into the pig, and you hear the sizzle of fat hitting the fire. Your veil's slipping again, and you adjust it, feeling the weight of petals and stairs. Your husband's tunic seems even brighter now, like it's soaking up the sunlight and the crowd's attention. He leans in whispering, "Did I mess that up?" You shake your head smiling because honestly the cow part was kind of charming. The elder hands you another cup of ale. How many of these are you supposed to drink? And you sip it, the sock-like aftertaste now oddly comforting. The village is watching, judging, celebrating, and probably betting on how long it'll take you to trip over your dress. The tables are calling piled high with bread, cheese, and meat that's drawing flies and hungry kids. Your mother-in-law is still watching her eyes, flicking between your veil and your husband's torn hose like she's keeping score. The goose guy is back his bird, now pecking at a spilled pile of grain, and you're pretty sure it's having a better day than you are. The vows are done, but the day's not. There's still the feast, the dancing, and whatever weird traditions the village has cooked up. You take your husband's arm, his boar brooch glinting, and step toward the tables. The dirt crunches under your shoes, the rosemary's completely wilted, and you're starting to think, this marriage might just work, not because of love, but because you're both surviving this chaos together. The crowd parts, and you brace yourself for the next act in this loud, sweaty medieval circus. The village square has transformed into a chaotic banquet hall with long wooden tables sagging under the weight of crusty bread hunks of cheese and a roasted pig that's already missing a leg to some quick-fingered kid. The air is thick with the smell of sizzling, fat-spilled ale and the faint tang of your wilted rosemary sprig, now barely clinging to your belt. Your green wool dress is starting to feel like a portable oven, and your new husband's yellow and red tunic is practically glowing, drawing stares and probably a few flies. His fishbone beard braid catches the firelight as he leans over to dodge a sloshing mug. His grin still lopsided, but a little looser now thanks to the ale. The crowd's fully in feast mode, their chatter rising over the crackle of the fire and the occasional bleat of a sheep who's wandered too close to the party. This is the heart of the medieval wedding, the feast, a days-long marathon of eating, drinking, and chaos that's less about romance and more about proving your family can feed a small army. You're not just a bride now, you're a host, a diplomat, and possibly a referee. You're guided to the head of the main table, a rickety slab of oak that looks like it's seen one too many winters. The crowd parts, some clapping, others too busy grabbing bread to care. Your husband's hand is still in yours, rough and warm, and you can feel the nervous energy radiating off him as he surveys the spread. There's a massive loaf of rye bread, dark and heavy, sliced with a knife that's more dagger than kitchen tool. Bowls of pottage, beans, leeks, and something that might be cabbage steam in the evening air, their earthy smell mixing with the sharp tang of cheese wheels stacked like fortress walls. The pig, golden and glistening, is the star, its skin crackling as the village butcher carves it with a flourish that's half skill, half show-off. An authoritative historical fact, medieval wedding feasts often lasted multiple days, with the host family's wealth measured by how much food and ale they could provide, sometimes bankrupting themselves to impress the village. You sit your dress catching on the bench's splinters, and someone shoves a wooden plate in front of you. It's piled with bread, a slab of pork, and a smear of pottage that looks like it's plotting to escape. Your husband's plate is even fuller, probably because his brothers are already arguing over who gets the pig's ear. The ale keeps coming past in heavy clay jugs that leave your hands sticky. You sip, wincing at the familiar sock-like aftertaste, and notice your husband downing his like it's water. The crowd's louder now, their faces flushed, and you spot the goose guy trying to sneak his bird a chunk of cheese. The elder with the strangling scarf is at the next table lecturing someone about crop rotation, her voice cutting through the din like a scythe. Your mother-in-law's still watching, her hawkish eyes flicking between your plate and your posture, like she's grading you on both. Here's an odd fact to chew on in some medieval villages. Wedding guests would bring their own spoons carved from wood or horn because nobody trusted the host to have enough cutlery. You've got your own spoon tucked into your belt, its handle worn smooth from years of stirring pottage. Your husband's using a knife to stab his food, which seems excessive but oddly endearing. Historians still debate whether these feasts were about generosity or competition. Some say families piled on the food to show off their wealth, even if it meant eating gruel for months afterward. Others argue it was a communal act, a way to bind the village through shared excess. Either way, your table's a mess, crumbs everywhere, ale pooling in the wood's cracks, and a kid's already dropped a chunk of bread into the dirt. The feast isn't just about food, it's a performance. Someone started singing a bawdy tune about a farmer and a very friendly cow, and half the crowd joins in, their voices slurring from ale. Your husband laughs, nearly choking on his pork, and you nudge him half to keep him upright, half because you're starting to enjoy his clumsy charm. The fire's roaring now, casting shadows that dance across the tables, and you can feel the heat on your face mingling with the itch of your wool dress. A woman across the table, her braid flecked with flour, offers you a wedge of cheese with a wink, like you're now part of some secret married club. You take it nodding and wonder how many of these people will be gossiping about you tomorrow. The night stretches on, and the feast shows no sign of slowing. More jugs of ale appear, and someone's passing around a basket of apples, their skins bruised but sweet. Your husband's brothers are now arm wrestling over the last pig rib, and you're pretty sure the goose is drunk, waddling in circles near the fire. The priest stumbles back into view, his ledger nowhere in sight, and raises a mug in what might be a toast or just a desperate grab for balance. You lean back, your plate half empty, and feel the weight of the day settling in. Not just the dress, the vows, or the stares, but the realization that this feast is your new life's opening act. You're not just eating, you're proving you belong to your husband, his family, and this loud, messy village. The singing gets louder, and someone's dragged out a drum, its uneven beat making the kids dance in wobbly circles. Your husband leans over his breath smelling of ale and pork and whispers, "Think we'll survive this." You laugh, surprising yourself, and nod. The crowd's too busy eating to notice, but you feel their eyes anyway. Watching, judging, celebrating. The tables are a battlefield of crumbs and grease, and you're right in the middle, your dress stained, your veil askew, but somehow still standing. The feast will go on for days maybe, and you're already bracing for the chaos to come. More food, more ale, and probably more geese. You take another sip of ale, the taste growing on you, and settle in for the long, strange night ahead. The feast is in full swing, now a chaotic symphony of clinking mugs, slurred songs, and the occasional crash of a bench tipping over under a particularly enthusiastic uncle. The air is heavy, with the scent of roasted pig now reduced to bones, and scraps mingling with the sour tang of spilled ale, and the faint, stubborn whiff of your wilted rosemary sprig. Your green wool dress is a mess, stained with grease and dusted with dirt, but you're past caring. Everyone else is too drunk or stuffed to notice. Your husband's yellow and red tunic is still blinding, though it's now sporting a splash of pottage across the chest, and his fishbone beard braid is starting to unravel, giving him a slightly deranged look that's oddly charming. The fire crackles, casting flickering shadows across the tables, and the village square feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next act in this medieval circus. That act, you realize with a sinking stomach, is the bedding ceremony, a public ritual that's about to make your already long day even weirder. You're still clutching your wooden spoon, its handle worn smooth from years of use, when the elder with the strangling scarf stands up, her voice cutting through the din like a blade through butter. To the bed, she announces, and the crowd roars, half in jest, half in expectation. Your husband's grin falters, and you feel your face heat up, not from the fire, but from the sudden realization that this village takes public to a whole new level. The bedding ceremony, a tradition in many parts of medieval Europe, was less about romance and more about proof that the marriage was sealed, that the contract was binding, and that the village had a front row seat to your future. An authoritative historical fact in the 14th century bedding ceremonies were common in England and France, where witnesses often tipsy escorted the couple to bed to ensure the marriage was consummated, sometimes even checking the sheets afterward. The crowd starts moving, a tipsy herd herding you and your husband toward your family's cottage, a low thatched roof building that smells of straw and yesterday's soup. Your mother-in-law leads the charge, her hawkish eyes glinting with something like glee, while your husband's brothers trail behind, still clutching their knives, and now singing a song about a rooster that's definitely not PG-13. You're trying to keep your veil in place, but it's slipping petals and all, and your dress catches on a stray nail as you cross the threshold. The cottage is dim lit by a single tallow candle that smells like burnt fat, and flickers like it's as nervous as you are. The bed, a lumpy straw mattress on a creaky wooden frame, looms in the corner draped with a blanket that's seen better days and probably a few mice. The crowd doesn't all fit inside, thank goodness, but the loudest ones do, shoving their way in with mugs still in hand. The goose guy is there, his bird inexplicably tucked under his arm, and you're pretty sure it's eyeing the candle like it's planning arson. Someone's shouting for more ale, and your mother-in-law starts barking orders about proper procedure like this is a military drill. You and your husband are pushed toward the bed, his hand gripping yours so tightly you can feel his calluses digging in. He whispers, "This is mad, right?" And you nod, because it is mad awkward and so very medieval. The elder starts chanting something that might be a blessing or just a list of chores, and the crowd joins in, their voices slurring into a chaotic hymn. Here's an odd fact to make you wince. In some regions, the bedding ceremony included tossing grain or dried peas onto the bed for fertility, which probably just made the mattress crunchier. Nobody's throwing peas here, but someone's tossed a handful of flower petals and they're sticking to your sweaty palms. Historians still debate whether the bedding ritual was about community oversight or just an excuse for a party. Some say it ensured the marriage's legitimacy, especially for inheritance. Others argue it was a holdover from older pagan traditions dressed up in Christian robes. Either way, you're standing by the bed, your husband's tunic glowing like a beacon, and the crowd's watching like you're about to perform a play. You climb onto the mattress, the straw crunching under your weight, and your husband follows, his boots still on, because apparently nobody thought to take them off. The crowd's chanting gets louder, and someone, probably one of his brothers, starts making a joke about the pig from the feast. You're blushing so hard, you're sure your face could light the room, and your husband's not much better. His curls plastered to his forehead with sweat. The elder raises her hands, silencing the crowd, and declares the marriage sealed, which is your cue to pull the blanket up and pray everyone leaves. They don't. Not right away. A few linger, offering advice that's equal parts bawdy and unhelpful, until your mother-in-law finally shoos them out, muttering about propriety. The door closes, leaving you and your husband alone, the candle flickering and the goose mercifully outside. You can still hear the crowd, their laughter echoing through the thin walls. But it's quieter now, the fire's crackle fading into the night. Your dress is crumpled, your veil's a lost cause, and his tunic looks like it's been through a war. He laughs a low, nervous sound and says, "Well, we survived that." You nod the straw mattress, poke in your back, and realize this is your life now. Not just the marriage, but the village, the nosy neighbors, the whole chaotic mess. The bedding ceremony's over, but the night's not, and you're already bracing for whatever comes next. Probably more ale, more gossip, and definitely more geese. The cottage door creaks shut, muffling the crowd's fading laughter and the distant bleat of a sheep who's probably still annoyed about the feast's noise. You're sitting on the lumpy straw mattress, the tallow candle casting jittery shadows across the walls, its greasy smoke stinging your nose. Your green wool dress is a wreck now smeared with grease dirt and a mysterious streak of pottage that you're blaming on the kid who tripped into you earlier. Your husband's sprawled beside you, his yellow and red tunic crumpled the fishbone in his beard, half unraveled like it's given up on the day. His boots are still on, tracking dirt onto the blanket, and you're too tired to care. The bedding ceremony's over, thank goodness, but the village isn't done with you yet. The next step in this medieval marathon is the proof of consummation, a ritual so awkward it makes the public vows feel like a stroll through a meadow. You're not sure if you're more nervous about the act itself or the fact that the entire village seems to have an opinion on it. The air in the cottage is heavy, smelling of straw candle wax and the faint lingering whiff of your wilted rosemary sprig, now a sad lump on the floor. Outside you can hear the feast still going with slurred songs and the occasional crash of a mug hitting the dirt. Your mother-in-law's voice cuts through sharp as ever, probably scolding someone for spilling ale on her best tablecloth. The bedding ceremony was public, but this part, proving the marriage is complete, is where things get really intrusive. In medieval Europe, consummation wasn't just a private matter. It was a legal necessity, especially for alliances involving land or titles. An authoritative historical fact, in 13th century England, the church and local courts often required evidence of consummation to validate a marriage, sometimes involving witnesses inspecting the bed sheets the next morning to confirm the couple had well sealed the deal. You glance at your husband, who's rubbing his neck like he's trying to erase the memory of the crowd's chanting. "They're not really coming back, are they?" He mutters, his voice low but laced with the same dread you're feeling. You shrug because, honestly, you're not sure. In some villages, the elders or even the priest would poke their heads in the next day looking for proof in the form of stains or worse, asking nosy questions. Your mother-in-law's probably out there right now, plotting to be the first to inspect. The thought makes your stomach twist, and you pull the blanket tighter, the straw mattress crunching under you like it's mocking your discomfort. The candle flickers, throwing your shadows onto the wall, and you can't help but wonder if this is what marriage is surviving, one awkward ritual after another. Here's an odd fact to make you cringe in parts of medieval France. Some communities hung the bed sheets out a window the morning after the wedding like a flag of victory to show the village the marriage was legit. You're praying your village skips that one. Your cottage doesn't even have a proper window, just a hole patched with pig intestines. Historians still debate whether this obsession with proof was about ensuring heirs or just community nosiness dressed up as tradition. Some say it protected women, making sure the groom couldn't back out. Others argue it was about controlling inheritance, especially when land or a particularly good cow was at stake. Either way, you're stuck here on this creaky bed with the weight of the village's expectations pressing down harder than the wool dress still clinging to your skin. Your husband shifts his boots, scuffing the floor, and you notice his tunic's got a new tear, probably from when he tripped during the bedding ceremony's chaotic escort. He catches your eye and tries a smile, but it's wobbly, like he's as overwhelmed as you are. "We just do our best, right?" he says. And you nod because what else can you do? The candle's burning low, the wax pooling in a messy blob, and you can still hear the crowd outside, their laughter softer now, but still there, like they're waiting for something. You're not sure if it's love or duty or just sheer stubbornness keeping you both here, but you're in it together. And that's something. The village elder's voice drifts through the wall, probably arguing with the goose guy about whether his bird gets a share of the leftovers. You can't help but laugh a small, tired sound, and your husband joins in, his chuckle rough but warm. It's a moment of relief, a crack in the tension, and you realize you're starting to like him. Not love, not yet, but like. His hand brushes yours, not on purpose, but you don't pull away. The blanket's scratchy. The mattress pokes your back, and the garlic paste behind your ears is still faintly burning, but you're here, and so is he. The village wants proof, but this moment, this quiet laugh in the flickering light feels like enough for now. Outside, the feast is winding down, or at least you hope it is. You can hear the fire crackling someone's drunken attempt at a lute and the inevitable moo of a cow who's wandered into the square again. Your mother-in-law's probably still out there planning her inspection, and you're dreading the morning when she'll march in with her hawkish stare, looking for evidence like it's a treasure hunt. You adjust your veil now, more a crumpled rag than a symbol, and try to focus on the present, the candle, the straw. The man beside you, who's still got that ridiculous fishbone in his beard. The proof of consummation isn't just about sheets or nosy elders. It's about the village's need to know this marriage will stick, that the land, the dowry, and the future are secure. You lean back, the mattress crunching again, and let out a long breath. The day's been a whirlwind of vows, ale, and intrusive traditions, but you're still standing, or at least sitting. Your husband's quiet now, staring at the candle like it holds the answers to whatever comes next. You're not sure what's worse, the thought of the village's scrutiny tomorrow or the fact that you're starting to feel at home in this chaos. The night's not over, and neither is the wedding. There's still more to come, more rituals, more gossip, and probably more ale. You close your eyes, the sounds of the village fading into a distant hum, and brace yourself for the morning when the real test of this marriage begins. The candle in your cottage has burned down to a stub, its weak flicker barely pushing back the shadows creeping across the straw-strewn floor. The air smells of wax-damp wool and the faint, stubborn ghost of that garlic paste behind your ears, now mercifully fading. Your green dress is crumpled, its hem crusted with dirt from the day's chaos, and your husband's yellow and red tunic looks like it's been through a wrestling match, with pig stains and all. He's sprawled on the lumpy mattress, one boot still dangling off the edge, his fishbone beard braid now completely undone, leaving a single bone sticking out like a lost relic. Outside, the feast's noise has dulled to a low rumble, slurred songs, the crackle of the dying fire, and the occasional snort of a cow that's wandered back into the square. You're both exhausted, but the village isn't done with you yet. The next act in this medieval marathon is the dowry exchange, a public spectacle where families haggle over goods pride and sometimes a literal handful of salt. It's not just a transaction. It's a performance, and you're about to take center stage. You hear a sharp knock at the cottage door, and before you can move, your mother-in-law barges in, her hawkish eyes glinting in the candlelight. She's carrying a small wooden box, its lid carved with knots that look like they've been chewed by time. Behind her is your father, his face tight with the kind of stress only a man who's spent months arguing over livestock can muster. The dowry isn't just a gift, it's the backbone of this marriage, a contract that binds your families as much as the vows did. An authoritative historical fact in medieval Europe, dowries often included practical items like livestock, grain, or household goods, and their public exchange was a way to confirm both families' commitment to the union, often under the watchful eyes of the village. Your mother-in-law sets the box on a wobbly table, and your father produces a leather pouch, its contents clinking softly. Probably the coins he's been hoarding since last harvest. The room feels smaller now, the air thick with expectation. Your husband sits up, rubbing his eyes, and you adjust your veil, which is more a crumpled rag than a symbol of modesty at this point. The dowry exchange isn't private. A few nosy neighbours have squeezed into the cottage, including the elder with the strangling scarf who's muttering about fair shares. The goose guy is here too, his bird tucked under his arm, and you're pretty sure it's eyeing the box like it's planning a heist. Your mother-in-law opens the box with a flourish, revealing a stack of folded linens, a small iron pot, and a single silver spoon fancy by village standards. Your father counters with his pouch, tipping out 3 copper coins, a handful of barley, and a tiny sack of salt which glitters in the candlelight, like it's worth more than the coins. Salt was currency in some places, a nod to its value in preserving food through lean winters. You're trying not to laugh at the seriousness of it all. Your father is practically stroking the salt sack like it's a prized calf. Your husband's mother is inspecting the linens, holding them up to the candle like she's checking for hidden holes. The crowd murmurs, and you catch snippets of their bets, think they'll throw in a goat. Hope it's not that sickly one. The dowry's not just about goods. It's about status trust and making sure neither family feels cheated. Your husband leans over whispering, "Is this normal, or are they just showing off?" You shrug, because honestly, it's both. The village needs to see this exchange to know your marriage is built on something tangible, not just a mumbled vow and a shared cup of ale. Here's an odd fact to make you blink in some medieval regions. Dowries included symbolic items like a single apple or a sprig of herbs meant to represent fertility or peace, though nobody's sure if the apple was ever eaten. Your dowry's more practical. No apples here, just linens and salt, but you're half expecting someone to toss in a random turnip for luck. Historians still debate whether dowry exchanges were about equality or leverage. Some say they balanced the family's contributions. Others argue they were a way to flex power with richer families piling on goods to shame their rivals. Your family's not rich, but the salt's a bold move, and you can see the elder nodding like it's a checkmate. The haggling starts, and it's less a negotiation than a theatrical showdown. Your father insists the salt's worth more than the spoon, which your mother-in-law scoffs at, calling it a fine piece. You're trying to stay out of it, but your husband's brothers are now in the room offering unhelpful comments about how the pot's too small for decent stew. The goose guy's bird squawks, breaking the tension, and you stifle a laugh, catching your husband's eye. He's grinning again, that lopsided grin that's starting to feel like a lifeline. The candle's flickering dangerously low, and you're worried it'll go out before they settle on who gets the better deal. Finally, your mother-in-law tosses in a wool blanket, and your father agrees to throw in a chicken. Not the good one, he clarifies to everyone's amusement. The crowd claps, more out of relief than excitement, and the exchange is sealed. The box and pouch are handed over the linens and salt, now shared property, a symbol of your family's uneasy truce. The elder mutters something about fair dealings, and the goose guy tries to slip his bird a grain of barley, which it promptly spits out. You're exhausted, your dress itching worse than ever, and your husband's tunic is now officially a canvas of stains. But there's a strange warmth in the room, not just from the candle, but from the sense that this marriage is real, now grounded in salt and spoons and the village's nosy approval. The feast outside is still limping along with a few die-hards singing about that rooster again. You can hear the fire's faint crackle and smell the last of the roasted pig, now just bones and memories. Your mother-in-law sweeps out, box in hand, and your father follows, still clutching his pouch like it's a family heirloom. The neighbors trickle out, leaving you and your husband alone again, the mattress creaking as you both slump back. That was a lot, he says, and you nod, too tired to speak. The dowry's done, but the day's not, and you're already dreading the next round of traditions, probably something involving more ale, or worse, more geese. For now, you let the candles flicker, lull you, the village's hum fading into the night, and brace yourself for whatever medieval madness comes next. The cottage is quiet now, or as quiet as it can be, with the feast's dying echoes drifting through the walls, slurred singing a clatter of mugs and the faint moo of that cow, who's still wandering the square, like it's got a personal vendetta. The tallow candles burned to a pathetic nub its smoky scent mixing with the straw's musty tang and the fading burn of the garlic paste behind your ears. Your green wool dress is a disaster stained with grease dirt and a splash of ale. You're blaming on the goose guy's clumsy elbow. Your husband sprawled on the straw mattress, his yellow and red tunic now a map of the feast's chaos, the fishbone from his beard long gone, probably lost in the pottage. You're both bone-tired, but the village's relentless traditions aren't letting you rest yet. The dowry's been swapped, the bedding ceremony survived, but now you're bracing for a different kind of hurdle, the church's bizarre rules about spiritual kinship, a tangle of restrictions that could undo a marriage faster than a spilled jug of ale. These rules aren't just quirks, they're a medieval minefield, and you're about to tiptoe through it. You hear a shuffle outside, then a sharp rap on the door. It's the priest back from his ale-induced nap, his lazy eye glinting in the candlelight as he stumbles in ledger clutched like a lifeline. He's not alone. The elder with the strangling scarf is with him, her face set, like she's about to announce a plague. They're here to double-check your marriage's legitimacy, not because they doubt your vows, but because the church has a whole list of reasons you might not be allowed to marry at all. Spiritual kinship rules, enforced with the zeal of a tax collector, banned marriages between people connected by certain religious ties, like godparents, confirmation sponsors, or even distant cousins. Nobody's bothered to map out. An authoritative historical fact: in the 12th century, the Church's Lateran councils expanded these prohibitions, declaring marriages invalid if the couple shared a spiritual bond, such as being godparents to the same child, to prevent incestuous unions in the eyes of God. The priest clears his throat to the sound like gravel in a bucket and starts flipping through his ledger, muttering about sacred bonds and forbidden degrees. You're sitting up now, your dress crunching against the straw, and your husband's looking at you like he's wondering if you're secretly his third cousin's godmother. The elder's pacing her scarf, bobbing like it's trying to escape, and she's grilling your mother-in-law, who's just arrived with a suspicious squint. Any shared baptisms, the elder demands, and your mother-in-law snaps. Not unless you count the time we all got stuck in that flood. The room's tense, the air thick with the weight of rules nobody fully understands, but everyone fears breaking. You're starting to wonder if your marriage, barely a few hours old, is about to be annulled because your aunt once held a candle at a christening. Here's an odd fact to make you blink. In some medieval villages, couples were banned from marrying if they'd both taken communion from the same priest on the same day, as it created a spiritual bond too close for comfort. You're praying. That's not the case here, because you're pretty sure you and your husband shared a wafer last Easter. Historians still debate whether these rules were about piety or power. Some say the church used them to control marriages, and by extension land and wealth. Others argue they were a genuine attempt to keep communities spiritually pure, even if it meant splitting up perfectly happy couples. Either way, the priest's muttering is making you nervous, and your husband's tugging at his tunic like it's the source of all his problems. The elder starts asking questions. Did your families ever sponsor the same baptism? Were you both at that one confirmation where the bishop got drunk and fell into the font? You're trying to keep up, but it's like unraveling a tapestry with half the threads missing. Your mother-in-law's getting defensive, insisting your family's clean as a new plow, and the priest just nods his lazy eye, making it hard to tell if he's agreeing or just sleepy. You glance at your husband, who's whispering, "Did we do something wrong?" You shake your head because, honestly, you're as lost as he is. The ledger's pages crinkle as the priest flips them, his finger tracing names and dates like he's solving a mystery. The candle's flicker makes his shadow loom, turning the cottage into a stage for this absurd interrogation. Outside, the feast's noise is fading, replaced by the soft chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the night breeze. You can still smell the roasted pig, though it's probably just bones now, and the faint whiff of ale lingers like a guest who won't leave. The elder's still pacing her scarf, now slightly askew, and you're starting to think she enjoys this power trip. Your mother-in-law is arguing about a cousin who might have been a godparent, but she's not sure. And the priest just sighs, like he's heard it all before. You're clutching your wooden spoon still tucked in your belt, like it's a talisman against this bureaucratic nightmare. Your husband's hand brushes yours, and you hold on his calluses rough but grounding. Finally, the priest slams his ledger shut, the sound, starting the goose outside into a squawk. No forbidden bonds, he declares, though his tone suggests he's more relieved than you are. The elder nods her scarf bobbing, and your mother-in-law looks smug, like she's won a round of village chess. The crowd at the door, because of course there's a crowd, murmurs approval, and you realize they've been eavesdropping the whole time. The goose guy's there, his bird now pecking at the doorstep, and you're pretty sure it's the only one not invested in your spiritual status. You let out a breath, your dress itching worse than ever, and your husband grins that lopsided grin that's starting to feel like home. The priest shuffles out ledger under his arm, and the elder follows, muttering about checking the next couple on her list. Your mother-in-law lingers, giving you a look that's half pride, half warning before sweeping out into the night. The cottage is yours again, the candle's last flicker dying as you slump back onto the mattress. That was insane, your husband says, and you laugh, the sound soft in the quiet. The village's rules, the church's rules, the endless scrutiny. It's all part of this marriage as much as the vows or the dowry. You're starting to see the shape of your new life woven with straw ale and a village that's always watching. The night's not over, and neither is the wedding, but for now, you let the cricket's song lull you, bracing for whatever medieval madness comes next. The cottage feels like a sanctuary now, its walls muffling the last gasps of the feast. Outside, a slurred verse of that rooster song, the clink of a dropped mug, and the ever-present moo of that cow still haunting the square. The candle's gone out, leaving you in near darkness, the faint glow of moonlight sneaking through the pig intestine window. Your green wool dress is a crumpled heap. It stains a roadmap of the day's chaos, and your husband's yellow and red tunic is slung over a stool, looking like a defeated flag. He's sitting on the straw mattress, his hair a wild tangle, the fishbone from his beard long lost to the night. The air smells of damp straw, faded garlic, and the ghost of roasted pig, now just bones picked clean by the village. You're both exhausted, your veil a forgotten rag on the floor, but the wedding's not done. The next tradition is one of the strangest yet graveyard weddings, where some couples, for reasons practical or divine, chose to tie the knot among the dead. You're not in a graveyard, thank goodness, but the village is buzzing about one happening nearby, and the gossip's creeping into your night like a chilly fog. You hear footsteps outside, soft but deliberate, and the door creaks open to reveal the elder with the strangling scarf, her face lit by a lantern that smells of burning fat. She's not here to check your spiritual kinship again. She's got news delivered in that sharp whisper that carries more weight than a shout. "They're holding a wedding in the churchyard tonight," she says, her scarf bobbing like it's nodding along. "Old widows marrying the miller's son." Your husband raises an eyebrow, muttering, "In a graveyard? Really, you're just as baffled." But the elder's already launching into the details, her voice low and steady, like she's telling a bedtime story for ghosts. Graveyard weddings, it turns out, weren't unheard of in medieval Europe, especially in poorer villages where the churchyard doubled as a sacred and cheap venue. An authoritative historical fact in some 14th century rural communities, couples married in graveyards to invoke divine blessings, or dodge church fees, the dead serving as silent witnesses to the union. The elder's lantern casts shadows that dance across the cottage walls, making the straw look like it's swaying. You're still on the mattress, your dress itching where it's bunched up, and you're trying to wrap your head around saying vows surrounded by tombstones. The elder explains that its practical churchyards were free, unlike the church itself, which might charge a fee or require a donation of your best chicken. Plus, some believed the dead could bless the marriage, their spirits lingering to approve, or maybe just to eavesdrop. You picture it a bride in a patched dress, not unlike yours, standing among weathered stones, her breath visible in the cold night air, while a nervous groom stumbles over his vows under the watchful eyes of both the living and the departed. It's eerie, but there's a strange poetry to it, like the village is tying itself to its past, its future, and everything in between. Here's an odd fact to make you shiver. In some medieval regions, graveyard weddings included tossing a handful of dirt onto the couple, symbolizing their union with the earth and, creepily, their eventual return to it. You're glad your village didn't go that route. Your dress has enough dirt as it is. Historians still debate whether graveyard weddings were about faith or frugality. Some say they were deeply spiritual, a way to honor ancestors or seek protection from the dead. Others argue they were just a budget option for couples who couldn't afford the church's candles or the priest's ale. Either way, the elder's story has you picturing the miller's son, probably sweating despite the night chill, promising his life to a widow who's seen more winters than he has. Your husband shifts the mattress, crunching, and says, "Sounds like a ghost story, not a wedding." You nod because he's not wrong. The elder's still talking, her lantern swaying as she describes how the village gathered at dusk, their torches flickering among the graves, the priest mumbling faster than usual to avoid lingering too long. You can almost smell the damp earth, hear the rustle of leaves caught in the wind, and feel the weight of unseen eyes. The goose guy's probably there, his bird waddling between tombstones, and you're betting it's the only one not spooked. Your mother-in-law's likely watching from the edge, her hawkish stare cutting through the gloom, making sure nobody's breaking any rules, or at least no more than usual. The elder pauses, her scarf catching the lantern's light, and you realize she's not just sharing gossip, she's warning you. You're lucky, she says, your wedding was proper in the square. There's a hint of judgment, like graveyard weddings are for the desperate or the devout, not respectable folk like you. But you're not so sure. There's something raw about swearing love among the dead, something that strips away the village's noise and nosiness. Your own wedding, with its ale-soaked chaos and nosy neighbors, feels almost tame by comparison. You glance at your husband, his curls sticking out like a hedgehog, and wonder if he's thinking the same. He catches your eye and shrugs, that lopsided grin creeping back like he's saying, "At least we didn't have to dodge ghosts." The elder leaves her lantern bobbing into the night, and the cottage falls quiet again, save for the distant hum of the feast's stragglers. You can still hear that cow stubborn as ever, and the faint crackle of a fire that's probably just embers now. Your dress is heavy, your veil long gone, and the straw mattress pokes your back like it's personally offended. The graveyard wedding story lingers, a reminder that your marriage, chaotic as it was, is part of a tapestry of strange traditions, each one tying the village to its past. You're starting to see your husband not just as the guy with the ruined tunic, but as someone who survived this day, with you from vows to dowries to nosy elders. The night's deep, now the air cools through the window and you're bracing for whatever comes next. Maybe more ale, maybe more gossip, or maybe just the quiet of two people figuring out what marriage means in a world of straw salt and spirits. The cottage is still now, the moonlight filtering through the pig intestine window, casting a pale glow over the straw-strewn floor. The air smells of damp, earth-faded candle wax and the stubborn ghost of roasted pig from the feast now, just a memory of bones and grease. Your green wool dress is a crumpled disaster, its hem crusted with dirt and ale stains, and your husband's yellow and red tunic is slung over a stool, looking like it's ready to retire from a public life. He's leaning back on the lumpy straw mattress, his curls a tangled mess, one boot still dangling off the edge like he's too tired to care. Outside the village is finally quieting, only the faint hum of a drunken lullaby and that cow still mooing like it's auditioning for a tragedy. The graveyard wedding gossip has left you both a little spooked, but the day's not done throwing curveballs. Now comes the bride ale tradition, a boozy communal fundraiser that's less about romance and more about turning your marriage into a village-wide drinking game. You're not sure if you're ready, but the ale's already flowing, and so is the chaos. You hear a commotion outside, a mix of laughter and clinking mugs, and the door swings open to reveal the baker's wife, her braid flecked with flour, holding a clay jug that sloshes ominously. Time for the bride ale, she announces, her grin wide enough to rival your husband's lopsided one. Your mother-in-law follows, her hawkish eyes softened by what's probably her third mug of the night, and a small crowd of neighbors piles in, including the goose guy, his bird now asleep under his arm like a feathery drunk. The bride ale isn't just a toast. It's a tradition where the village brews a special batch of ale, sells it to the guests, and uses the profits to fund your new life, or at least pay for the damage from the feast. An authoritative historical fact in medieval England, bride ale was a common custom, with communities brewing ale for weddings to raise money for the couple, sometimes turning the event into a multi-day drinking fest that left everyone broke but happy. The baker's wife sets the jug on the wobbly table, its contents smelling like barley and regret, and starts pouring into mismatched mugs. Your husband sits up muttering more ale. Really, but takes a mug anyway, his fingers brushing yours as you grab one too. The ale's thick, gritty, and tastes like it was brewed in a barn, because it probably was. The crowd's buzzing again, their faces flushed from the feast and the night's endless supply of booze. The elder with the strangling scarf is here, her scarf slightly looser now, and she's passing out mugs like she's running a tavern. "Drink up," she says, her voice sharp but cheerful. "This is for your future." You sip, wincing at the sock-like aftertaste, and wonder if your future includes a permanent headache. The bride ale's not just about drinking, it's a business deal. Guests toss coins into a wooden bowl, some with a flourish, others grudgingly like they're paying a tax. Your father's at the edge of the room, counting the coins with a squint, probably calculating how many chickens he can buy back after the dowry. Your mother-in-law's keeping track too, her eyes darting between the bowl and the jug like she's making sure nobody's drinking for free. The goose guy tosses in a bent copper coin, then tries to pour some ale for his bird, which mercifully stays asleep. You're starting to see the pattern of this wedding. Every tradition, from vows to dowries, is a chance for the village to meddle, celebrate, and maybe make a profit. You're not just a bride. You're a fundraiser, and the ale's your ticket to a slightly less broke tomorrow. Here's an odd fact to make you chuckle. In some villages, the bride ale was so strong it was nicknamed knocker ale because it could knock out even the hardiest drinker, sometimes leaving guests passed out in the square. You're hoping this batch isn't that potent, but the way your husband's swaying after one mug suggests otherwise. Historians still debate whether bride ale was about community support or just an excuse to get drunk. Some say it was a practical way to help young couples start their lives. Others argue it was a social flex, with families competing to brew the best ale and rake in the most coins. Your village's ale isn't winning any awards, but it's doing its job. Coins are piling up and the crowd's getting louder. Someone starts a new song, this one about a bride who brewed ale so good it started a riot, and the room erupts in laughter. Your husband joins in, his voice off-key but enthusiastic, and you can't help but smile. He's not graceful, not with that torn tunic and those muddy boots, but he's here, surviving this madness with you. The baker's wife refills your mug, winking like you're now part of the village's inner circle, and you sip again, the ale's bitterness softening with each gulp. The elder's counting coins, now her scarf bobbing as she mutters about fair shares, and you realize this tradition is as much about the village as it is about you. They're investing in your marriage, literally, and you're not sure if that's sweet or just another layer of pressure. The night's growing late, the moonlight brighter through the window, and the crowd's starting to thin. The goose guy slumped in a corner, his bird snoring softly, and your mother-in-law's finally smiling, probably because the coin bowl's heavier than expected. Your father slips out pouch in hand, and you know he's already planning how to spend his share. The straw mattress creaks as you lean back, your dress sticking to your skin, and your husband's hand brushes yours again, this time on purpose. "We're rich now, right?" he jokes, and you laugh because the coins might buy a new blanket, but you're both still stuck with this lumpy bed. The bride ale's done its job binding you to the village's wallets and its heart, and you're starting to feel like you belong not just to him, but to this chaotic, ale-soaked community. The last stragglers stumble out, leaving you with a half-empty jug and a bowl of coins that jingle softly when you nudge it. The air's cooler, now the feast's fire reduced to embers, and you can hear the crickets taking over where the singers left off. Your husband's quiet, staring at the bowl like it's a puzzle he can't solve. The bride ale's over, but the wedding's not, and you're already bracing for the next strange tradition, maybe something involving puppets or more geese. For now, you let the moonlight and the ale's faint buzz lull you the village's hum fading into the night, and hold on to the hope that you and your husband can keep surviving this wild medieval ride. The cottage is a cocoon of quiet now, the moonlight spilling through the pig intestine window like a soft silver blanket. The air carries the faint musk of straw, the sour tang of spilled ale from the bride ale jug, and a distant whiff of the feast's roasted pig, now just a pile of bones in the square. Your green wool dress is a crumpled ruin, its stains a chronicle of the day's chaos, greased dirt, and a splash of pottage you're still blaming on that kid with the sticky hands. Your husband's yellow and red tunic is draped over the stool, looking like it's surrendered to the night, and he's slouched on the straw mattress, his curls wilder than ever, one boot still stubbornly clinging to his foot. The village outside is finally winding down, the drunken lullabies fading into the chirp of crickets and the occasional grunt of that cow still wandering like it's got a grudge. The bride ale's coins are stacked in a bowl, glinting faintly, but the wedding's relentless parade of traditions isn't over. Now comes the strangest yet puppet marriages, where dolls or effigies stood in for absent brides or grooms, often to seal deals over land or power. Your marriage didn't need puppets, but the village is buzzing about one happening nearby, and it's as bizarre as it sounds. The door creaks open, letting in a gust of cool night air, and the baker's wife, her braid still flecked with flour, her eyes bright with gossip. "You hear about the proxy wedding up at the manor," she whispers like she's sharing a secret recipe for trouble. Your husband perks up muttering, "Puppets, really?" And you lean forward, your dress crunching against the mattress, because this sounds too weird to be true. In medieval Europe, proxy marriages were a thing when distance politics or feuds kept a bride or groom away. Someone or something stood in their place. An authoritative historical fact: in the 13th century, noble families sometimes used effigies, wooden or straw figures, dressed in finery, to represent absent spouses in marriage ceremonies, especially to secure land deals or alliances without the hassle of travel. The baker's wife says this one's for a baron's daughter, marrying a knight who's off fighting somewhere with a straw doll in his place, complete with a tiny sword. You try to picture it, a church decked out with candles, a straw knight propped up like a scarecrow, its cloth face painted with a lopsided grin, while the bride, probably not thrilled, says her vows to a pile of hay. The baker's wife is animated, her hands waving as she describes the doll's cloak, dyed blue with woad, and how the priest kept sneezing from the straw dust. Your husband laughs a low, rough sound and says, "Better than me. Tripping over my vows, I suppose." You nod because your own wedding, chaotic as it was with geese and ale, feels downright normal compared to this. The village loves these stories. They're gossip fuel-proof that even the rich have their own brand of madness. Your mother-in-law's probably out there now, her hawkish eyes gleaming as she spreads the tale to anyone still sober enough to listen. Here's an odd fact to make you blink in some proxy weddings. The effigy was burned after the ceremony, symbolizing the absent spouse's commitment to the union, though it probably just made a mess. You're glad your village didn't go that far. Your cottage is flammable enough without adding straw knights to the mix. Historians still debate whether puppet marriages were practical or just absurd theatre. Some say they were a clever way to bind families across regions without anyone leaving home. Others argue they were a mockery undermining the church's push for personal consent in marriage. Either way, the idea of a straw groom makes your own wedding with its nosy elders and drunken goose feel almost cozy. The baker's wife keeps talking, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush as she describes how the baron's daughter tossed her veil at the doll like she was daring it to object. You can almost hear the crowd's laughter, see the priest's flustered squint as he tried to bless a pile of straw. Your husband's grinning, now his boot finally off his bare foot, kicking at the straw mattress. Imagine me as a doll, he says, probably better dressed. You laugh, picturing a straw version of him, fishbone and all, and realize you're starting to like his goofy humor. The coins from the bride ale jingle as you shift, a reminder of the village's investment in your real messy marriage. The baker's wife pours a splash of ale from her jug, offering you a sip, and you take it, the familiar sock-like taste, now oddly comforting. Outside, the night's grown colder. The crickets louder, and the cow's moo has finally faded, maybe because someone dragged it home. The elder with the strangling scarf is probably still out there, spreading the puppet wedding tale, her scarf bobbing as she gestures. Your mother-in-law's likely with her, calculating how your marriage stacks up against a straw knight's. The cottage feels smaller now, the moonlight softer, and you're starting to see your husband not just as the guy with the torn tunic, but as someone who's weathered this day with you, vows, dowries, nosy neighbors and all. The puppet wedding story is a reminder that your marriage, for all its chaos, is real, grounded in sweat and ale, not straw and pretense. The baker's wife slips out her jug, sloshing, leaving you and your husband alone again. The mattress creaks as you lean back, your dress sticking to your skin, and you can feel the weight of the day settling in, not just the traditions, but the sense that you're part of something bigger. A village that's as much a part of your marriage as you are. Your husband's quiet now, staring at the coin bowl like it's a map to your future. No puppets for us, he says, and you nod, grateful for that at least. The night's deep, the air cool, and the village's hum is a distant lullaby. You're bracing for the final act of this wedding, whatever it may be, but for now, you let the moonlight and the quiet wrap around you, holding tight to the man beside you, who's more than a straw doll could ever be. The cottage is a cocoon of quiet. Now the moonlight spilling through the pig intestine window, softening the rough edges of the straw-strewn floor. The air carries a faint chill laced with the lingering sense of damp wool, stale ale from the bride ale jug, and the distant memory of roasted pig, long since picked clean. Your green wool dress is a battle-scarred relic, its hem crusted with dirt grease and a smear of pottage. You're still blaming on that kid with the sticky hands. Your husband's yellow and red tunic is draped over the stool, its colors muted in the dim light like a flag after a storm. He's slumped on the straw mattress, his curls a chaotic halo, one bare foot kicking lazily at the blanket. The village outside is finally quiet. The drunken songs faded, the cow's stubborn moo replaced by the soft chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves. The puppet wedding gossip has settled, but this wedding's final act is about rebellion. Specifically, how some couples used fashion to defy the rules, turning their attire into a quiet protest against the village's expectations. Your dress and his tunic, patched and loud as they are, might just be your own small act of defiance. You shift on the mattress, the straw crunching under you, and notice a tear in your dress's sleeve, probably from when you dodged the goose guy's flailing arm during the feast. It's not just a tear, it's a badge proof you survived the day's chaos of vows, ale, and nosy elders. In medieval Europe, clothing wasn't just practical. It was a language, a way to signal status, loyalty, or even rebellion. Some couples, fed up with the church's rules or their family's demands, wore outfits that broke the mold colors, too bright fabrics too fine, or accessories that raised eyebrows. An authoritative historical fact in the 14th century sumptuary laws in parts of England and France restricted what commoners could wear, banning bright dyes or luxurious fabrics to keep social hierarchies clear, but some brides and grooms ignored these rules, risking fines to make a point. Your husband's tunic, with its garish yellow and red clash, is a perfect example. It's not just loud, it's a middle finger to the village's expectation that he'd wear muted brown like every other farmer. You remember the baker's wife whispering during the feast, that tunic's practically shouting, and you smiled because it was true. His boar brooch, glinting even now in the moonlight, was another jab too fancy for a farmer's son, but he wore it anyway, like he was daring the elder with the strangling scarf to comment. Your own dress green as a summer field wasn't exactly rebellious, but the iron pendant around your neck, shaped like St. Catherine's wheel, was your mother's idea. A subtle nod to defying spinsterhood, maybe even the village's gossip about your late marriage. You touch it now, its cool metal grounding you, and realize you're both pushing back in your own way. Here's an odd fact to make you smirk in some medieval towns. Couples would wear mismatched shoes, one old one new, to confuse evil spirits, though it probably just made them trip more. Your husband's boots, one scuffed and one slightly less scuffed, might have been his accidental nod to that tradition. Historians still debate whether these fashion rebellions were about personal expression or social defiance. Some say couples used their wedding attire to claim a bit of freedom in a world of rigid rules. Others argue it was about showing off, even if it meant a fine or a lecture from the priest. Your village isn't fancy enough for sumptuary laws, but you can feel the weight of unspoken rules. Don't stand out. Don't overshine your neighbors, and you're both breaking them just a little. The moonlight catches your husband's face. His grin softer now, tired, but still there. Think they'll fine us for the tunic, he asks, half joking, and you laugh. The sound swallowed by the cottage's quiet. You're starting to see his quirks, the fishbone braid, the torn hose, the stubborn boot, as his own rebellion, not just against fashion, but against the village's suffocating expectations. Your dress patched and stained is your armor proof you're not just a bride, but a survivor of this chaotic day. The elder's scarf, your mother-in-law's hawkish stare, the priest's lazy eye, they all tried to box you in, but your green wool and his garish tunic say you're more than their rules. The village sleeps now its chaos, tucked away under the stars. The crickets hum a gentle lullaby, the wind whispers through the thatch, and the square lies still, its tables littered with crumbs and dreams. Your marriage, woven through vows, feasts, and nosy neighbors, is a tapestry of defiance, small, quiet, but yours. The coins from the bride ale glint softly, a promise of tomorrow, but it's the stains on your dress that tear in his tunic that tell the real story. You lean back the straw, poking your spine, and his hand finds yours warm and rough. "We made it," he whispers, and you nod, feeling the weight of the day melt into the night. The world outside fades, the moonlight blurring into a soft silver haze. Your dress, your pendant, his tunic, they're not just clothes, they're your rebellion, your story, your bond. The village's rules, its gossip, its geese, they'll be there tomorrow, but for now it's just you, him, and the quiet. Let the stars keep watch, let the crickets sing you to sleep, and let this strange, wild day drift away like a dream. You're home in this moment, in this life, and that's enough.